my attempt to speak to as many authors as we can over the course of the next few weeks, certainly during lockdown, and to hopefully introduce some people to authors they may not have heard of, or alternatively to let you know a bit more about the authors that you love and enjoy reading. So today we're starting with Paddy Magrane. Paddy, is that how I pronounce your name, Paddy Magrane?
It is, in one.
I should have checked that. I should have checked that, shouldn't I, before we started?
Lots of people fail at the first hurdle, but you've done really well. Thank you.
Fantastic. Is that an Irish name, Paddy?
It is, yeah.
Because I was looking at your website earlier, and I noticed that you were born in Bahrain, you were brought up in Northern Ireland, educated in Yorkshire, and then you spent some time in Florence and New York and the Highlands and London. Yeah. So it was hard to tell what nationality.
What the hell I am? Yeah, I'm a bit of a mess actually, but I am now settled. I'm kind of like, I've been in Devon now for about 15 years. So yeah. Right.
And it's in Devon that you are starting up the Lyme Crime, isn't it? Regis Lyme Crime Festival.
It is, yes, absolutely. I was. It was all set for June, late June, and obviously this thing has happened. This thing that we won't name anymore.
Yeah.
But all the writers who've signed up for Lyme Crime in 2020 are returning in 2021. I'm also adding a few extra things because I think by then we might well have been starved of crime festivals for perhaps a year. I mean, I hate to say it, but so let's make it a big one, you know.
Well, I think the way it's looking at the moment, I mean, calendar-wise, I think the only one that's still, the closest one that's still there, I think, is Capital Crime, isn't it? And God knows if that will happen.
Yeah, exactly. I just want it to be a kind of full event where we don't have to all sit in a theatre at 2 metre distances from each other. I want, you know, it's got to be a meaningful event, really. Otherwise, it's not worth doing.
Of course. No, of course. I mean, yeah, you want people to want to come back, don't you? So you've got to get it right first time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, right. The reason we're talking to you today, and we're going to pretend that today is tomorrow. We're doing the Graham Norton thing. Excellent. So if anyone watching, we're actually in Thursday. It's Wednesday. Yeah. We're actually in Thursday, so it is Thursday, the 7th of March, as far as we're pretending.
May.
Oh my! That's how long we've been in here. Right, 57 days. It says up there, 57 days. 7th of May, and you have just released your third book, I believe, and it's your first Audible book.
My first Audible book, yes.
Your third book and first Audible, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So Red Desert is out today, and it's a thriller set in Iraq, Berlin and London. It opens in Iraq with the first day of work for a psychotherapist called Tom, who's escaping this devastating event in his past. And he thinks he's got as far away from it as possible by escaping London to the desert of southern Iraq. But then, of course, things start going wrong in classic thriller form. And he begins to wonder whether he's made an absolutely terrible mistake.
Okay, so I guess his first mistake is going to a war zone.
His first mistake is going, his first mistake is going to a desert. The book came about because I've got a friend in Devon who works out there. He works for an oil company out, and he works in demining, and the desert there is something like the 5th largest untapped reserve of oil in the world. But it's also the most dangerous place in the world because it's littered with mines that the Iraqis left during the Gulf War, and then all the cluster bombs we dropped really helpfully that never exploded. They were completely faulty. So the desert's littered with them. And his job was to just mitigate the problem. So to clear them if they wanted to build or drill or survey, but otherwise to map them and then just kind of sort of navigate around them using GPS. So it's a kind of, when he spoke, I just thought, God, this is the most ridiculously risky place on earth. Let's set a thriller there, and then even better, let's drop a killer in there for sort of added thrills. So that's the basis of the book. It's an incredibly dangerous place in which someone is killing, and the oil company are willing to ignore it because their only priority is the production of 400,000 barrels of oil a day.
Yeah.
And this psychotherapist hero starts to ask questions that begin to get him in a lot of trouble.
That sounds really interesting. It certainly sounds like the sort of book that I want to listen to. So this is an Audible book, though, isn't it?
It's an Audible book. So yes, it's what they call an Audible original, which I think is quite a kind of new idea. And it's essentially a book that is exclusively Audible for a year. I think that, when I got my deal, I sort of, maybe a part of me thought, oh, it would be quite nice to have got a traditional deal, with paperbacks and other formats. But actually, as things have turned out, audio is experiencing quite a kind of boost at the moment. And what they've done with it is amazing. They've overcome some serious obstacles. Their recording studio shut down. Loads of narrators couldn't get to a microphone, and in the end, they got this guy who's Joe Jameson, who's fantastic, who's got his home studio.
I've heard of him.
Good, and he's recorded it, but I think it's been quite, they've had to sort of work flexibly and adaptably given the circumstances. But yeah, it's great. I'm absolutely delighted.
Right. I mean, it's a new innovation, isn't it? And it's a brave thing to do, and I think but it seems to have certainly paid off from what you're saying timing wise. I mean, I know it's hard to find a plus or a silver lining at the moment, but you seem to have found one.
Yeah, I think I have to be really careful about how I speak about it, because I do genuinely feel that lots of people are kind of really suffering, and lots of authors are really suffering from lost supermarket opportunities, bookshops being really struggling to get kind of distribution out, stuff like that. It's my telephone going.
Never mind.
Okay, all right, don't worry. My daughter's running across the kitchen to catch it.
Okay. It's almost certain that my dog's going to go at some point.
Yeah, and I think my dog, any minute now, my dog's going to bark. So
yeah.
But anyway, yes.
So I've got one too.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, no. Yes. So I'm acutely aware that loads of other writers have suffered kind of massive setbacks, either to their publication date or to the distribution of their book. So yeah, I'm careful about how I speak about it, but I am really happy that I'm with Audible. They've been a great support, and they're sort of, hopefully as of tomorrow, doing this amazing product they've pulled together will be coming out, and so it's good, all good.
Well, I've listened to some. They sent me an excerpt. I think you arranged for them to send me an excerpt. And it sounds great. It starts fantastically well, and it sounds great. And I think it's right, isn't it? It takes in some other parts of the world as well. So you're not just in Iraq. You're in Berlin, and you're in London, I think, at some point. Yeah,
absolutely. So basically, the first kind of third of the book, or maybe kind of a little bit more, is in Iraq. And things reach, without sort of ruining it, things reach a kind of sort of explosive kind of mini conclusion. And there's an attack on the camp, and Tom is kind of forced to come. Tom and a number of others are forced to come home, but he's got these questions about why these deaths were occurring, and he links up with a journalist who's looking into this rather notorious barracks, which has kind of a sort of series of unanswered deaths hanging over it, and a kind of conspiracy.
A deep cut kind of thing.
I try not to mention that, but yes, absolutely.
I'm sorry.
No, don't worry, it's fine. Well, you'll know. Don't worry. You're a man who knows what I can and can't say. But yes, absolutely, a deep cut kind of vibe to it. And he and the journalist start to look into it, and they find a connection between these kind of two places, between what's going on in Iraq.
Yeah.
And it's all about. Well, it's not. I was about to give it away then. Yes, so they start looking in and around London, and then their search takes them to Berlin, where one of the officers from the kind of regiment is still serving, or not in Berlin, but kind of nearby. And there's a kind of chase, a kind of Bourne-esque, hopefully a sort of Bourne-esque chase across Berlin, and and then towards the end of the book, he's back in Iraq. So Berlin, London, Iraq, three places you probably wouldn't necessarily connect together.
I say anyone who's read my books, which hopefully people watching this will have done, will know immediately that's exactly my kind of book. So I'll be downloading the whole thing tomorrow.
Brilliant, yeah. It's just like location for me. A kind of guy at sea in a foreign location is complete catnip. I just absolutely love it.
Well, it's a much broader canvas, isn't it? You got this incredible canvas if you can take them anywhere.
Yeah. Exactly.
At the end of my first book, I sent my hero off to join the United Nations and made up a whole agency just so he could go anywhere in the world, because it frees you up so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of like, you feel slightly I mean, I know Berlin. We went out there to research it. Obviously, I know London, and obviously Iraq was a complete no-go. But this guy that I spoke to, this guy who works in mine, he filled me in on so much detail, and I was sort of asking him, daytime temperatures, and what whether there's humidity, whether there isn't, what it's like to kind of pass through immigration and customs at Basra International. So I felt like I'd been, or as close to as I want to, because it sounds like kind of hell on earth.
It's just the perfect resource, isn't it, really, in terms of research? A guy next door that can tell you that, and you don't have to risk your legs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I very much doubt he'll be listening to this, but he's quite a kind of, he's a guy who kind of thinks about risk a huge amount, obviously, his job, and he's quite buttoned up in a way, I think, because he's kind of got to have held all this tension in. I mean, the idea of going out there and kind of walking through a field where your legs could get ripped off by a cluster at any point.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be a gym wreck. He's very controlled, former military, very calm. And I think that speaking about his world, he was quite close to retirement at that point. Speaking about it's been quite therapeutic. At least I hope I've given him something from the hideous experience of being grilled by me every day.
Yeah. Hopefully no nightmares.
Hopefully no nightmares. Yeah, exactly. You can always come to me anyway.
Well, that's what I was about to ask you next. You were saying Tom, your lead character, Tom. What's Tom's surname?
Tom Chalice.
Tom Chalice is a psychotherapist.
He's a psychotherapist. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's your profession as well.
That's me. So I am finally doing that thing that everyone's told to do when they write, is to write what you know. And I don't know what you think of that advice, but can be quite crap, can't it? Because
because what you know normally doesn't really transfer to anything.
Yeah, what we know is quite boring. What we know is the bins and walking the stuff. But basically, yes, I'm a psychotherapist, and what Tom shares so Tom's got this kind of tortured past, which I don't really have, to be fair, and but what he does have is this kind of therapeutic lens through which he sees the world, and also sort of therapeutic insight, which he uses to sort of get at sticky situations. So whereas Reacher would use this fella, Tom uses his brain. I mean, not that Jack Reacher is a blunt tool, but Tom uses his brain much more to get out of sticky situations. He resolves problems with his brain rather than his fists, really.
Sure. And that's sort of the writing what you know side of things, that you did the cerebral approach.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think there's something. Sorry.
No, please.
No. I just think there's something quite interesting about the way other characters in the book kind of interact with him, because some of them are clients, so they're kind of bringing him stuff. And I'm not giving too much away to say that some of his clients are unreliable in the content they give him at the beginning.
Right.
So he has to kind of work out who's telling the truth. And of course, the assumption is, with my training, is that people come to you and you offer them what's known as unconditional positive regard. So you kind of accept what they're saying, irrespective of how they present and what they're talking about. So that is his quandary at the beginning.
That's very interesting. That is writing what you know, isn't it? That really is bringing something slightly unique to the whole situation.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. I mean, there are other writers. There are obviously, there's, remember his name, Fitz in Cracker, Jimmy McGuire's thing. There are shrinks out there who have been captured. There's a really, pretty much my favorite writer of all time, a guy called Patrick McGrath, who's quite old now. He lives in New York, but he wrote a fantastic book called Asylum, which was made into a film. And he was brought up, Patrick McGrath was brought up as a child in the grounds of Broadmoor Prison, where his dad was a superintendent.
Really?
He wrote amazingly about mental health, and he writes shrink characters who are, extraordinarily fully formed, protagonists. But on the whole, I hope it's a reasonably unusual, job for a thriller protagonist.
Yeah, no, it certainly sounds it. And as I said, it's as a whole package, it's definitely something I'm going to be wanting to read and hopefully listen to and read next year.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
But listen to from today. As you know, I had a number of questions that I wanted to ask you. Cool. We're not going to have time. I mean, I'm looking at the clock. I'm trying to keep all the interviews under 15 minutes so we can go onto Instagram. Surprisingly, you didn't need any of them. So I'm going to ask you one very quickly, because I want to know this about everybody. Music, books, films, or sport? Which one are you? What's your biggest influence?
Films, without doubt. I mean, the book, for instance, is inspired really by Homeland, the first season, not the other ones where they were and American Sniper and Hurt Locker. Films about what war does to people.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to have to let you go because we're about to run out of time. Paddy, thank you very much, and good luck.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Tony. Thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye-bye.